All right. Hi, everyone. Officially welcome. My name is Kayla Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's reading, where we'll be hearing new youth literature from the press. We'll be hearing from books that span a range of ages, from children's literature to middle grade and young adult books. We'll begin with Dawn Bragg reading from the picture book Felicia, Flamingo, and the Florida Friends, released May 27th. D.N. Buckingham reading from the middle grade time travel novel Forgotten Oath, released June 11th, and Diane C. Jerome reading from the young adult speculative fiction novel Spirals of Stardust, released June 4th. All three authors' books can be purchased both from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, you can find the books on Atmosphere Press's website. That's at atmospherepress.com/books. And I'll also put the direct links in the chat for everyone. And there they are. At the end of today's event, we are going to have time for audience questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or more of our authors, just go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. And then during the actual readings themselves, please stay muted to keep extraneous sound at a minimum. Of course, you can certainly feel free to use the chat for any praise and comments in addition to questions. And one last note before we begin is that we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we would love to read it, so submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting Dawn, Dee, and Diane today. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Dawn Bragg. Retired among the beaches of Florida, Dawn is an avid reader turned author who holds a deep passion for the literary arts. Author of numerous poems and short stories, she's crafted an online presence to share her work with others. Dawn attributes her love of poetry and storytelling to her late father, Holly Bragg. As a lifelong advocate for literacy, Dawn devotes her time to creating children's books that celebrate differences, champion the underdog, and encourage children to find acceptance in others and in oneself. When she's not writing, Dawn can be found traveling, enjoying the Florida beaches, and spending time with family and friends. Visit her online at Instagram. That's at dawnbragg.writes. Today, we'll be hearing from Felicia Flamingo and the Florida Friends, in which Felicia is moving to Florida, where she's sure she's going to miss all her friends at home. Little does she know, there's a whole group of friends just waiting to welcome her into town. So join along as Felicia meets her new pals, Allie Egret, Iris Evis, Henry Heron, Carlos Crab, and Allie Gator, and realizes that living in a new town might not be so bad after all. And also today, I'll be sharing the illustrations from Dawn's book while she reads. So I'll pull those up, and then once we're screen sharing, Dawn will take the reading away. Just 1 second here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Here we go. Okay, and I'm going to go to full screen mode so we can see the illustrations in all their glory. So when you're ready, Dawn, you can begin the reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, the title of the book is Felicia Flamingo and the Florida Friends. Felicia Flamingo was feeling sad. She and her family had just moved to a new Florida town, and she didn't know anyone who lived there. Felicia had to leave all of her old friends from first grade behind. She would especially miss her best friend, Tuta Turtle. They all said that they would call and write over the summer, but she was still feeling very lonely. Felicia's mom was worried about her feeling so lonely and encouraged her to make friends. Why don't you walk down to the park on the corner? I noticed a lot of kids your age that play there every day. Perhaps you'll meet a new friend, her mother said, feeling hopeful. Felicia took her mom's advice and walked down to the park near her new home later that day. The park was filled with so many fun things to do. Felicia saw a big baseball field with bright green grass. Next to the ball field, a group of skateboarders glided along the ramps in the skate park. Children waited for their turns on the swings and slides, and behind a fence, many families swam in a big blue pool. Felicia loved the water. The glittery pink inner tubes and colorful beach balls filled her with excitement. She noticed parents playing with their kids. I'll bet my mom and dad will bring me to swim soon, she thought to herself. Felicia wondered what else there was to do in the park, and as she turned around, she saw a pretty white egret standing beside her. Hi, my name is Estelle Egret. Are you new here? I haven't seen you before. I love your bright pink color. I come here every day to play and have fun. Felicia loved that Estelle seemed so nice and hoped they could be friends. Felicia told Estelle that she had just moved to town and did not know anyone. Well, we can fix that, said Estelle. I have lots of friends here. Come on, I'll introduce you to them. By the way, Felicia, do you like to go fishing? Maybe we can try our luck at the pond one day. Felicia followed Estelle to a group of kids who were standing near the fence watching cheerful swimmers in the afternoon sun. Hey guys, said Estelle. This is Felicia, and she just moved to town. I wanted to bring her around to say hi. Hello, I'm Isabel Ibis. I'm glad to meet you. I like to go search for interesting things hiding in the grass and under the water. Would you like to go discover the outdoors with me soon? You never know what you will find. Yes, I would love to go, Felicia answered enthusiastically. Hernando Heron tossed a baseball in the air and greeted her with a big hello. Felicia, do you like to play baseball? Nice to meet you, Hernando. I'm not very good at baseball, but maybe you can teach me. The group of friends decided to walk over to visit Caesar Crab. He was cleaning up after a picnic. Estelle interrupted Caesar mid-bite to introduce him to Felicia. Don't you see I'm in the middle of my afternoon snack? Growled Caesar. At that moment, Althea Alligator came over and scolded him. There's no reason for you to be rude, Caesar, Althea snapped. By the way, I'm Althea Alligator, and I'm friends with everyone here. You will always have a buddy as long as we're around. Felicia was so excited to meet everyone. Each of them had such unique hobbies, and she could not wait to join in their fun. She did not feel as lonely anymore and realized that her new Florida town would be a great place to live. Felicia spent the rest of the afternoon playing freeze tag and enjoying ice cream, feeling grateful that she met Estelle Egret. As the day came to a close and the sun began to set, the friends walked Felicia back to her new home, making plans to meet up again the next day. And just like that, Estelle, Isabel, Hernando, Caesar, and Althea became her best new Florida friends.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I
Thank you.
always think it's really just such a treat to be able to see these illustrations and because they're so vibrant on the screen, so you can only imagine how beautiful they are in person and reading those with the children in your lives. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. So, reading next will be Dee Buckingham. Dee is an award-winning author, librarian, and certified book coach specializing in coaching historical fiction and memoir writing. Her previous books include My Name is Loa, a middle grade book about a young boy sent to the Molokai leprosy settlement in 1898, Staring Down the Dragon, an American Library Association best book for young adult selection about a teenage girl returning to high school after having been treated for cancer, Who Murdered Jane Stanford, an adult historical mystery based on the unsolved mystery of how Jane Stanford, wife of Senator Leland Stanford, died in Waikiki in 1905, and World War II Hawaii, Images of America, a photo history. Dee now lives in Kaneohe, Hawaii, with her husband and their ragamuffin dog, Rosie. She can be reached directly at her website, that's dorotheabuckingham.com. Dee also offers a free newsletter about civilian life during World War II in Hawaii at dorotheanbuckingham.substack.com. Today, we're going to be hearing Dee read from Forgotten Oath. Noah can't believe the family legend about his grandfather making a pact with a night marcher to save Noah's life. But years later, Noah finds himself transported to Hilo in 1834, where he must prove the innocence of both himself and the night marcher's descendant, who stands accused of murder. If the oath is not fulfilled, Noah will die the same day the descendant will hang, and his grandfather's spirit will never find peace. And with stakes set that high, let's hear more of the story now from Dee.
Morning. I just want to, if you can, the cover is magnificent, which you can't see, but thank you, Arcadia, great cover. So chapter 1, the only thing you have to know is that in Hawaii, tutu, T-U-T-U, is an affectionate term for grandmom. So chapter 1, we filed off the school bus looking like a prison work gang. All of us in our orange Waikiki intermediate school t-shirts and our closed-toe shoes. T-shirts so we could be identified in case we escaped, and closed-toe shoes because Miss Nainoa warned us that the cemetery was littered with broken glass. Miss Nainoa waved her clipboard over her head and said, "Noah, Blaze, pick up the pace." My cousin Blaze elbowed me in the ribs. "What's the rush? It's not like these dead guys are going anywhere." Blaze at his wittiest best. Gather round, Miss Nainoa, even standing on her tiptoes, was still shorter than most of our class. Hurry, we've only got 3 hours to get our work done. 3 years couldn't put a dent in this place. The mission house's cemetery was a graveyard of toppled headstones, broken bottles, and cat-licked clean food cans. One grave had a statue of an angel with a missing wing. Another had a statue of a Scotty dog with a yellow spray-painted butt. I nudged Blaze. Do you think they were so rich that they were buried with their dogs? They might have been rich, but no one's taking care of them now. Blaze shook his head. Can you imagine if we let Tutu's or Papa's grave look like this? Noah and Blaze had the same grandparents, Tutu Kekoa and Papa. Their daughters were Noah's and Blaze's moms. Tutu would come back and haunt us, Blaze said. I laughed. And tell us more stories. Listen up, class. And for the 500th time, Miss Nainoa told us how to clean a cemetery headstone. Swirl your sponge gently and be respectful of the dead. Frank Santos crept up behind us. Be respectful of the dead, he mocked Miss Nainoa. Dead people. Ooh. Blaze looked at me. Yeah, spirits and family ghosts. Frank raised his eyebrows. Family ghosts? The Kekoa family curse, Blaze told him. Knock it off, Blaze, I said. Blaze hunched his shoulders over and he whispered, the Kekoa family curse. You're not funny, Blaze. Blaze grinned. The night marches are coming for one of us. He looked at me. I shoved Blaze so hard he stumbled into Frank. Miss Ninoa clapped her hands. Settle down. She pointed to a rusted out shed. Make a line. Pick up your duffel bags. Each bag has an index card tied to it with a plot number of the grave you'll be cleaning. Miss Ninoa droned on, but I wasn't listening. I was watching a homeless guy walk toward a backyard fenced in by a low lava rock wall and a wrought iron gate. He was probably wondering what a busload of kids was doing in his cemetery. He caught me looking at him and he tipped his hat, and I waved to him like some kind of kindergarten kid waving to his best friend from across the room. He had on a wide-brimmed black hat and a black jacket buttoned to his collar, a great outfit for 90-degree weather. From where I could see his face, between his hat and his long, shaggy hair, he looked harmless. Shaggy, that's it. It was a good name for him. Blaze was still running his mouth about the Keikoa family curse. He grabbed Frank's arm. Frank, has Noah ever told you he's the chosen one? Leave it alone, Blaze. I gave him a quit it or I'm going to pummel you look, which is pretty much worthless because we both knew I'd never do it. And if I ever tried, Blaze would wipe the sidewalk with me. He kept telling Frank the story. When we were little, our tutu Keikoa babysat us. Sometimes at night after dinner, she'd sit us down at the kitchen table and she'd take our hand in hers. Then she'd lean over and whisper, "You boys should know your family history." Miss Ninoa clapped her hands. Class, there are coolers of water bottles under the table. Make sure you stay hydrated. Blaze didn't stop while Miss Ninoa was talking. Our tutu talked to spirits. Our tutu was an old woman who told stories, I said. You know they were real, Blaze said. Right. Family curses, night marchers, spirits that won't rest. Blaze smirked. One night, when our grandfather was deep in the valley, he heard the pounding of drums. Blade made his voice warble like our grandmothers did. Our papa heard the chant of the warriors. Then the wind blew, and the sky turned orange, and fire flowed down the valley like lava. It was the night marchers. Papa knew he was forbidden to look in the face of the night marchers. He knew it was punishable by death. He should have lain face down on the ground. But whether by accident or too much courage, he looked at the marchers straight in the eye, and the night marcher raised his spear ready to strike. Papa begged for his life. Spare me. I'll do anything you ask. The night marchers took pity on Papa, and in exchange for sparing his life, he made Papa swear an oath to save the life of someone in his family. Miss Ninoa was walking straight at us. Her glare was aimed at Blaze. I should have warned him, but I didn't. I watched, knowing she could be as fierce as any imaginary night marcher. Blaze kept babbling, oblivious. Our tutu would reach for Noah's hand and... Blaze stopped mid-sentence. Busted! Miss Ninoa stopped right in front of him. She crossed her arms and said, Do you boys have something to talk about that I should know? Miss Ninoa, no, ma'am, we answered together. Then go to the shed and pick up your duffel. By the time we walked over, we were the last three in line. The shed was as much of a dump as the rest of the place. Black swivel chairs, plaster-spattered Home Depot buckets, twisted folding chairs, and an empty chicken coop that was being ignored by the roaming chickens. There were only 3 duffel bags left. One of them was a hot, moldy mess. Frank snatched one of the clean ones, and I reached in front of Blaze to claim the other one. But when I did, a gust of wind whirled around me. It blinded me for a second, and I turned away, rubbing my eyes. When I opened them again, I saw Blaze holding the last clean duffel. That's fine. I picked it up, pretending I didn't care. The 3 of us looked at our index cards. Just my luck. Frank and Blaze got graves in the main part of the cemetery with all the other kids. I had a hand-drawn map on my card that showed my grave being in that small yard on the side of the church, away from everybody else. My guy's buried way over there, I showed them the map. What do you think? Frank asked. Blaze said, maybe he was a murderer and the missionaries wouldn't let him be buried with the good people. I said, or maybe they were so rich they had their own separate spot. Yeah, rich people do that all the time, Frank agreed. The problem was that I didn't believe it, and I wasn't excited to be so far away from everyone else. I looked over at the yard. Sure, rich people, like Shaggy. I watched Shaggy sit on a lava rock wall and toss pebbles into a shopping cart filled with junk. I hoisted my duffel bag over my shoulder. I grabbed the last straw mat on the table. I looked over at Shaggy again. I was sure he was harmless. After all, this was his place. We were the intruders. I still wasn't thrilled about being alone with him. I was afraid Blaze would make fun of me, but I asked Frank anyway. Do you think I should tell Miss Nainoa about the guy? What guy? Frank asked. I don't see any guy. I looked back, and Shaggy was gone. See, Frank, I told you my cousin was cursed. He's seeing ghosts now. Whatever. I didn't care what he thought. I trudged through the mud and pushed open the iron gate. When I did, the hinges squealed like one in a cheap horror movie.
Thank you so much, Dee. That was so dynamic. I can really tell that you are so familiar with the genre and the reader. So that was really a great reading to experience. Thank you
Thanks.
for that.
Thanks a lot.
Of course. So our final reader for today is going to be Diane C. Jerome. When pursuing her doctorate in curriculum and instruction, Diane used vignettes to craft a page-turner dissertation. She wove student experiences into articles. Blue dragonflies are dandelions for the Effective Reading Journal, and a challenged third grader connects with meaningful books for the Indiana Reading Journal. Today, while in private practice near her Houston suburb home, she facilitates learning at Affect While Educating, which is, or where you can learn more information at drdrdianejerome.com. Diane is often spotted taking early morning, meandering walks with her golden doodle, Josie. Today, we'll be hearing Diane read from Spirals of Stardust, a young adult novel. In the 23rd century, a great shift occurred on planet Earth. After implanting animals with cloned human genes using dust, devices uncovered through star technology, humans went extinct. Now, with an ailing father at home, Jill the jaguar forges her way through an industry her ancestors helped advance. Will Jill be able to carry on the family legacy in medicine, or will she be remembered as the fledgling nurse wannabe? Diane, the virtual podium is yours.
Thank you for having me. Okay, so I'm going to read from the prologue, and then after that, I'll read a few chapters. Okay, so before Jill's story, we need to step back in time to fully understand how everything came to be. Let me read from the chronicles of the post-Anthropocene epoch. Historical context. By the mid-23rd century, with animal displacement, some to the point of extinction, there were no surviving rainforests left on planet Earth, or so everyone thought. The last existing rainforest on Earth was Jill's home. While rainforests began to vanish, humans made huge leaps in science. Scientists learned that carbon-rich stardust existed prior to Earth's formation. The great shift occurred when stardust's link to human DNA expanded to genetics. Humans implanted animals with cloned human genes without industry regulations in place. Human culture gracefully leapt into the animal kingdom. Transitional period. During the same time when humans ruled the world, medical interventions, technical innovations, and scientific progress were commonplace. Initially, animals were trained to support humankind. Their genetics were modified, and they received implants. Meanwhile, the US government secretly funded a project that involved the merger of medicine technology and science steeped in chemistry and aerospace discoveries. The project, devices uncovered through star technology, dust, right out of the gate produced outcomes that were the missing links between stardust and life forms. Once this took hold, the government was obligated to release information according to the International Freedom of Space Information Act. This caused a frenzy within the scientific community. Long story short, Stardust devices were used along with CRISPR and PCR techniques found through biological research to implant cloned human genes into animals. When medical discoveries, artificial intelligence, and scientific technology, including procedures using CRISPR, PCR, and now GM dust, genetically modified devices uncovered through star technology, merged to a powerful level, opportunities presented themselves. Animals were modified to mimic basic human behavior. Animals became the new slaves of North America. They were traded, bought, and sold everywhere. Even robots took a sideline for GM dust animal, air quotes, helpers. In a nutshell, altered animals began to possess human behaviors. Robots were old news, but the AI community pushed for more involvement. Supposedly, there was a promising future in store for robotic integration, according to the high-tech gurus of the time. Unfortunately, without checks or laws in place, some helpers took on less than ideal behaviors like bullying. The more these helpers learned from humans, the more they were entrusted with human jobs. Gem dust helpers were used across the board in every type of industry. They were even trained to be sent on dangerous missions, including space exploration. This became the top lucrative endeavor. Everything was so advanced that people felt invincible. So they moved forward without passing laws to keep progress in check. This new innovation was marketed as GM Duster. Anyone had at least one GM Duster. This species evolution produced an evolutionary schism that sealed the end of human rule. After humans fell prey to AI, animal-led explorations became the new norm. Animals developed just enough intelligence to survive and progress until sophisticated animal beings began to flourish. Eventually, humans went extinct. Okay, chapter 11, Melodrama from Inside, Mike the Mosquito. I was here waiting impatiently, not from being anxious or bored, but rather from being on watch. Sometimes it was worth it, some of the time it was not. The most impatient mosquito you'll ever meet. That's me. Bet you never thought mosquitoes were impatient. Well, let me tell you, it drove me mad just thinking about all the times I was stuck waiting. Get it? Stuck? As in, we used to get to stick you. Now you have stuck it to me, making me wait it out. It's like I'm a love bug, only I'm stuck to the wall instead of stuck to my love. I was like a new and improved species with an old bag of tricks being used on me. I heard that some creatures could be revengeful chaps, but I think it was a little ridiculous after years of trying to even the score. Most of my ancestors were just reactionary stingers anyway with no ill intent. I think the scientists should have just gotten over it. I declared it was nowhere fair and such a bear. As you know, stingers went out of existence decades ago. That was thanks to genetic slicing and dicing. Of course, personally, my impatience all started back when I was an egg. Later, I remember waiting as larva. After that, I had to bide my time being pupa. Of course, being male means waiting to use my sperm to increase the mosquito population. Not surprisingly, this was meticulously controlled. Then I have anywhere from weeks to years before my demise, my depose, my defame, my derail, before I deflate, which I admit was frustrating. It just prolonged the inevitable. Once again, waiting. In ancient times, it took only days. then kaput. Now I'm stuck waiting on the sidelines of life as we know it. The irony of it all. Should I go on? Thanks for letting me off the hook as opposed to these middle schoolers. Sprawling city inside Jill. Meanwhile, forces like tiny electric shocks continue to assault deep inside me. Zzz, zzz, zzz. They intercepted each rational thought the moment any tried to emerge. I studied. I know this. Every shock force carried an onslaught of insight and feelings. This doesn't make any sense. I don't remember this. I've got to think about this another way. My inner world has always been undefined by words. It has always been strewn with visuals. Why then has my mind blanked out? How did my mind reach such a blank dead end? Chapter 13, Sensitivity inside Aunt Calinda. Mike the mosquito does not know all that happens inside Jill. All he saw was Jill's behavior. It was like only seeing the top of the ocean and not seeing all the life that happens below the surface. Supposedly, work had already begun to churn out highly educated GMI gem dusters. For right now, though, Mike couldn't even fathom what Jill experienced on the inside. On the contrary, Cy the sloth knew about these experiences, maybe because she was so observant. Cy knew all about how things happen or how to deal with them when they do happen. As Mike coldly watched Jill with heartless impatience, Cy warmly and kindly watched Jill with a smile on her face. Sweet Cy hung from a branch, explaining what she knew about feeling like Jill. Cy spoke in such a lovely voice. She naturally had beach wavy hair with a golden brown and sun-kissed from being outside so much. When Cy talked, it was as if she was wearing an orangish red glossy lipstick that offset her hair and brought out the rainbow of colors in her eyes. Chapter 14, Wisdom inside Cy the Sloth. Most people who see not things, thinking in a creative way, most people not. Having no idea what it's like. Most people seeing life by putting on artist glasses, it's more. Being overly sensitive, it's more. This from my own experiences. Maybe I know. Yes. I feel my duty to pass down, is it? Learned through my life have I, going through such hard times that others would not. A certain learning style, it's more. For the good, it's living a life and using a beautiful mind. Sprawling City inside Jill, Chapter 15. As I considered what lies ahead, pure gut-wrenching angst ascended from deep inside me. It's here, in lightning speed motion. I intensely felt it, but no one in the room even noticed. Gulp. My heart went thud. That feeling was so strong. It was not like I was imploding in broad daylight. It just felt that way. How could I feel something so strong? Thud. But it doesn't show in the least. The effects of my visual spatial current grew bigger than the room itself. To explain how my gift of being creatively spatial impacted my grades would be completely impossible. What was certain was that there was no stopping its unrelenting intensity. This is just how it was. As a result, its effects overshadowed my grades. Or, to say it another way, grades did not in any way measure my knowledge or achievement for that matter. I tended to score way below my expectations. If only I could get the grades I deserve for all my hard work. I knew that I knew this, and I really, really knew it. Sometimes I couldn't match what I knew with the answers on the test, or I couldn't find what I knew. If I did not go all out to study, taking steps beyond the usual with visual diagrams, relationships, scenarios, and verbal parodies, I would most certainly fail every exam, especially since I was such a bad guesser. Thud. Chapter 16, Reflecting Inside Aunt Calinda. The general consensus from people, like other middle schoolers or adults in the world, was that Jill had a problem. Why doesn't she do what is right? Maybe she needs medication. This view loomed wide rather than the view that Jill had something valuable, something unique to contribute. There were all kinds of labels for it: ADD, ADHD, low performer, lacks motivation, to name just a few. Look at how she does things all backwards. I've never seen anyone do it like that. There were actually times when Jill remembered being called names like bird brain, overly sensitive, or monkey brain. She had been accused of not getting it, or demanding to just never mind, or forget it, it doesn't matter, and asked with sarcasm, "What's wrong with you?" Or, "What planet are you on?" by those who completely misunderstood her. Occasionally, those who loved her would say, "It's not your fault." In pure frustration, Jill blamed the stirring in her mind on the noise around her. The young middle schooler didn't really understand how or why this happened to her. In reality, there was no external culprit. It was what it was. It wasn't what it wasn't. It was just Jill, just genuine, gentle Jill. Chapter 17, Wisdom Inside Cy the Sloth. Actually, from a family of sloths, I was. Insulted each other all the time, they did. It was ridiculous, they think what I would do. Really understood me, never they. Like them, not was I. Yes. To let being rude seep inside me, I refused. Still hurt deeply their words. To let the badness around the outside of me inside will not do. Change my heart inside me it would have, so I refused. I knew that if that happened, the badness would win. Choosing the good I did, of being bad instead, of me strong a child made. Yes. To be on the side of good, once decided, I strong made me it. Took all sorts of ridicule, could I? Yes. When Mike the mosquito criticized Jill, it was like, so how Jill must have felt, could I? Me still heard deeply the words.
Thank you so much, Diane. This is such like a world that you have to establish for us and build, and I think you did a really great job of doing that, even in like less than 15 minutes, which is great. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Of course. So at this point, we do have time for our audience Q&A. So if anyone has a question for one or more of our authors, go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. We have already received a couple of questions. So the first one is a question for all three of you. This person is wanting to know, how do you write a story compelling for younger readers or for any audience that is not your current age group, and kind of getting into that mindset? So maybe if we could start in reader order and start with Dawn on this one.
Children are such an inspiration to me that I actually take from them their ideas, the things they've said to me, and it's easy. You just turn it into a story. And so a lot of times dealing with those young ones in their minds, they can put the best ideas out there.
Sorry, I lost the mute button for a second, but yeah, I think it's kind of easy to feel like the children's mind is so far from ours when we're, past the stage of teenagehood and college and young adulthood and then into our adulthood. But yeah, it's really about writing like a good story, and a lot of children really love that, just like adults do. So I love that. What about you, Dee? How do you write a story that's compelling for this middle grade audience that you're writing for?
I think, with the movement of in their own voices, authors have to be aware of the fact of if they're writing across gender or they're writing across races or cultures, that you really, first of all, have to respect that culture and they have to respect that particular voice and point of view. In my case, I'm a Caucasian woman, older, writing about a Hawaiian boy, young. I'm crossing 3 lines there. And I don't do it lightly. I am very aware of the fact that I am not writing in their own voices. So I think that whether it's middle grade or whether it's somebody from a different grade, you have to be culturally literate and fluent. And I mean, you have to know these kids. You have to experience these kids. You have to understand the perspective of the world from their point of view. And also, whenever I write out, I have sensitivity readers. So this book is heavy on Hawaiian culture. So I made sure that teachers of Hawaiian, the Hawaiian language schools, Hawaiian immersion schools, all took a shot at it to make sure that I get it culturally right. But also, I'm a grandmother, and I have 3 very, very honest grandsons who are readers, who tell me, oh, Nona, you were so off, so cultural literacy, a respect for the other community, and sensitivity readers, whether it's writing for middle grade or whether you're writing for, I don't know, the mosquito from Mickey the Mosquito. Yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, I think that's something a little underrated from a lot of authors is this experience of just engaging with that cultural literacy. I love that phrase that you use. So yeah, I can totally see how that would infuse the story with a more grounded and real feeling sense, regardless of the age group you're writing for. So to you as well, Diane, how do you write a compelling story for this age group that you're writing for?
Okay, well, first I have to agree completely with Dawn and Dee. I too, I have students around me all the time, like 6 days a week. I'm with students, so I'm able to get an idea of how they're thinking. And then I also, like Dee, I had beta readers, and so I would already write my story, and then I would ask them for their advice or their feedback on what I had written. And like Dee too, they are so honest and upfront. But I have to say, I guess, I don't know if it's the most important thing, but what really gets me to write to a certain audience is to get engrossed in my characters. And most of the time, I'll be writing early in the morning. And so I'm just still kind of hazy after I've had my little cappuccino. But one time I was at the office and I drove home. So it only took like 20 minutes. And I was so into my characters that this literally happened to me. I couldn't believe it. I was driving through my neighborhood and there was I guess a woman, I think it was a woman, not a man. She was leaned over and all I could see was the back of her hair. She was gardening. And I remember the first thing that came into my mind was, oh, I wonder what kind of animal she is. Like I was still in the story in my mind. And it like filtered over into reality for me. So I would have to say that besides the inspiration I have from my students and the feedback that I get from my beta readers, it's by me being so immersed in the story that I can target a specific group.
I love that we keep hearing about beta readers. It's so hard sometimes to give your work to people like that, but it is so beneficial, and I'm really happy to hear that that's been such an influential part of your process. So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. We've got a question. This is specifically for Dawn. This person says, or I should say, this person wants to know, what was the process of working with an illustrator like, and did you already know what you wanted the images to look like before you started working with them?
That's a good one. Working with my illustrator was so easy. It was so nice. Her name's Sarah. Sarah did an absolutely wonderful job. And what's funny, guys, is that I had this image in my mind of the cover, but I had not talked to Sarah about it. Sarah sends me an email and had the drawing in the email. And when I looked at it, it was the very thing I had up here. It was as though we were communicating, and we hadn't even spoken of it. So with Sarah, she was absolutely wonderful. She was able to take those images and put them on paper. And everything that she drew for me is everything that I wanted. It's almost like we were connected. So I had a very fun and easy time with my illustrator. And again, she put everything down just the way I wanted it.
That's perfect. I
It
I
was.
always love to hear when that process goes so smoothly because it's such an artistic collaboration and I think you can tell it really paid off. So yeah, that's wonderful. Another specific question, this one is for D. This person says, based on your bio, you've also written adult books. Do you have a preference of writing for kids versus for adults? Oh, D, it looks like you're
Yeah, because kids are much more tech savvy than adults. Um, it is a lot easier for me to write an adult fiction. Writing for, okay, I am a librarian, so you have to use that, as a backup. And I've lived in Hawaii since the 1980s. So when I write for middle grade, especially historical fiction, I have a lot of burden. I want it to be historically accurate more for the middle graders than I do for adults, because I don't want to get it wrong for the middle graders. I think it's important to tell them historic truth, whether the specific facts aren't exactly right. Okay, you have license there, but I want to know them to know the spirit of it. So I feel a strong obligation to children's literature, young adult literature, YA, juves, to be very, very accurate, much more than an adult. You're impressing them. This is an impression. Adults kind of, they read it and they've been exposed to 20, 30 years of fiction. They know some is true and some isn't, what have you. So that the first right there is the historical aspect and the accuracy. That's really tough. The second is not writing in my own voice, the whole movement of writing their own voices. If I write in a middle grader's voice as a character, I better know middle grade kids. I better know what they're thinking in terms of the time that they're going through in life, the the whole generic responses they have. And then, as Diane said, to be very specific. When it gets bottom line is it's got to be an interesting story and it has to be an interesting character. I think the middle grade books must carry more of value. I'm not saying that's a moral story, but yeah, I am. There must be some kind of morality and there's some kind of value to who they are. And their character arc is always, always positive. In an adult historical fiction, I can make negative arcs, I can't do that with middle grade. And you're very restricted about what you can do. No sex, drugs, rock and roll. That's definitely out of the question, not even smoking. So you have to make your point by what they see, but not what they see in real life, because that's not acceptable for a middle grade reader. So yeah, adult, much easier, much easier. And as Diane said, middle graders and children, that's a tough audience. They do not suffer fools. They know when you're trying to be a middle grader and they catch it and they smell it and they know you're not being sincere. So yeah, adult, much easier.
Yeah, wow. I'm not surprised necessarily to hear that, but I think it really speaks to how much, nuance and depth you have to have when you're working with, text for these younger readers. So just an extra layer of impressiveness there. This is another question for all three authors. This person said, what inspired you to write this particular story? Diane, do you want to start us off with this one?
Okay. So, mine is actually inspired by all my experiences and the experiences that I see as I work with students in school. So I built a world, but I also knew that there were some really serious topics, just like Dee was mentioning. You have to think of what's appropriate for your readership. And with this being very serious topics, and I wanted my readers to relate to the characters, so that's why I built a world, a rainforest, and I had the characters have human traits because I wanted the readers to be able to relate to them. You know, like in psychology, they talk about normalizing a situation before you can work through it. So that was in the back of my mind. Like I needed to kind of like normalize it for their reading level, make it something that they could relate to, because there's some serious topics in there. And so I was, I was inspired by my own experiences and those around me. And there's a whole lot of symbolism and hidden meanings in there for my family and friends who know me. My brother, I don't know if he's here, but he mentioned the other day, he said his wife asked him, what is that story about? And he goes, all I got to tell you is it's Diane. So I stayed true to who I am. It had to do with my identity as a student and the students that I work with. That's how I came to create it.
Yeah, it's kind of that it takes a village kind of thing, you know. It comes from all these different sources of inspiration and people who are supporting and helping, and sometimes they don't even know it. But yeah, definitely that group kind of effort in some ways. Dawn, what about you? Where did the inspiration come from for this book, this particular story?
To Florida about 8 years ago. And I look out my window and what do I see? I see birds of various that were featured in my book, various sizes, various colors, and alligators live here, And I thought, I love the world of animals. Why not? Why not feature these birds, this alligator, these Florida creatures in a book and make it relatable to children? So it was very simple. My inspiration was quite simple. I can say I just looked out the window and I was inspired.
I love that. It's like the environment is participating.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
fantastic. And Dee, what about you? Where did the inspiration for this story come from?
Okay, here comes truth. In 2000, my husband and I and my son and daughter-in-law went to the Big Island, had coffee, and in the the throwaways they give you in the coffee shops, there was a little snippet about David Douglas. David Douglas is a Scotsman. He's a botanist. If you bought a Christmas tree that was a Douglas fir tree, he named that tree after himself. Okay. So I read the story and it talks about David Douglas dying mysteriously on the Big Island. He could have been murdered, it could have been suicide, or it could have been an accident. But his body was found in a hole that was dug to capture and trap bulls, wild bulls. The problem is his body was found in a hole with a live bull in it. So I thought, oh, wow, that's enough gore for sixth graders and fifth graders. That's really great. I thought, oh, there's a story there. This isn't 2000, right? So on the surface, what you've got in the book is how Noah has to solve that mystery. Okay. And I thought that was intriguing and a good hook, right? But underneath that, there's also the issue that in Hawaii, we are so multicultural, multiracial. Most kids are, have 3 or 4 different ethnicities. There's a great renaissance of Hawaiian culture and pride going on. And so my daughter-in-law is biracial. And sometimes some kids think it's not cool, to accept the culture and accept the mysteries of their culture. So you get what are called Hawaii Kai Hawaiians, who are BMWs and tennis group. And they're going to shun a lot of the culture. So it was part of it was here was, looking around, seeing so many kids in that grammar school age where they are going through a process of accepting both heritages. In Noah's case, he is Hawaiian and he is Portuguese, and his cousin is Hawaiian and Chinese. So that's what you've got underneath it. But the mystery of this, the death, I wanted to be able, again, but being a librarian, I wanted to show the history of the Big Island in the 1830s without making it deadly boring and kind of, putting in a little bit of, just enough of blood in there to be acceptable to 6th graders and 4th graders. So the initial inspiration was a cup of coffee in Hilo, and that wasn't good enough. It didn't have any gravitas. It didn't have any substance to it. So I put it together with this. But yeah, it was a cup of coffee. That was it.
I honestly love that. It's like the butterfly effect, right? One little thing and it leads to all these developments.
And the coffee addiction.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you to all 3 of our authors for joining us and sharing these stories and these thoughts in the Q&A today. It's always so wonderful to hear these books come to life in the voices of their creators. So thank you so much to Dawn, Dee, and Diane, 3 Ds, for being generous with us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining and celebrating these wonderful authors. Don't forget that you can order Felicia Flamingo, Forgotten Oath, and Spirals of Stardust from the links in the chat. I'm just putting those in one more time for everyone there. And then please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, sign up for our email newsletter, or to submit a book manuscript of your own. You can submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. We'll look forward to hearing from you, but until then, that's it. So have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.